Good morning. Welcome to Beyond the Fundamentals. In this video, we're going to talk about Saul and the Confounding. Saul and the Confounding. If you enjoy what you get on this channel, we encourage you to support the channel. The details to do so are in the description below. You know, the content that you get here is not like the content that you get anywhere else. It is different here. And the content that we come up with takes time, space, and resources to generate, and we appreciate those who contribute. Make it possible to keep doing this. So if you like to see this content continue, and if you like to see it continue ad-free, we encourage you to become a part of us by supporting us on PayPal or Venmo. And again, the description is in the link, the details are in the description below this video. What I want to do now is start with Acts chapter 9 and look at our text that we're looking at today. So far, the Lord has appeared to Ananias in a vision, and he tells him basically to go connect with Paul. And one of the things we point out is because Paul is praying. For behold, he prayeth. Okay, so Paul, as far as we know, we are not told yet that he has the Holy Ghost, but we are told that he prays. A lot of Calvinists like to try to use the example of Paul as proof of Calvinism. But if you look closely, it's actually the exact opposite of Calvinism. If Calvinism were true, Saul would have been irresistibly regenerated under the preaching of Stephen. He would have heard the voice of the Savior, and as a sheep, he would have responded to it. But he didn't. He responded later. And it took extraordinary means to persuade him, extraordinarily persuasive means. And before Ananias is summoned, Paul is praying. Saul is praying. Okay? So this actually proves the biblical method of salvation, not Calvinism. So Ananias he says, Lord, I've heard how much evil this guy has done to the saints at Jerusalem, and he's got authority by the chief priest to bind everyone. You know, he can put this in chains and haul us off. The Lord said unto him, Go thy way, for he's a chosen vessel unto me to bear my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel, for I will show him how great things he must suffer for my sake. And it goes to show you, like in Philippians, unto you it's given not only to believe on him, but also to suffer for his sake. So that is to endure, to undergo, okay? Great things he must. Suffering, while Paul did definitely suffer, and you can read about some of that in places like 2 Corinthians 11 at the end of the chapter, Paul definitely did suffer pain and turmoil and torture and torment, but he sometimes in the Bible, when the word suffer occurs, it simply means to undergo or to endure, for something to occur that you're part of, that you are a part of. So how great things he must undergo for my name's sake, and suffering, as we would think of it today, is also part of that. And Ananias went his way and entered into the house, and putting his hands on him, said, Brother Saul, the Lord, even Jesus that appeared unto thee in the way as thou camest, hath sent me, that thou mightest receive thy sight, and be filled with the Holy Ghost. And immediately there fell from his eyes as it had been scales, and he received sight forthwith, and arose, and was baptized. And when he had received meat, he was strengthened. Now we're going to look at this strengthening in a couple minutes later in a few verses, and we're going to ask an observation question. Is that the same strengthening there as it is in verse 22? Then Saul was certain days with the disciples which were at Damascus. Now, when you see the word disciples in the Bible, it does not, when you think of disciples, sometimes you may think of the 12 disciples or the 12 apostles, as they're called, that Jesus selected. And when the word disciples is used, that's not how it's used most of the time. It's just followers of Jesus. Anybody can be a disciple of Jesus, okay? So you'll see that phrase show up. Somebody being called a disciple of Jesus does not necessarily mean that they are one of the 12 apostles. Like Jesus sent out 70 disciples in the book of Luke, okay? So disciples does not necessarily mean the 12 apostles. The 12 apostles are not in Damascus. They are in Jerusalem. So these are just believers. These are just other people. The term Christians isn't being used yet. That doesn't get used to chapter 11, verse 26, but these are just other Christians, as we would say. With the disciples which were at Damascus, and straightway he preached Christ in the synagogues, that he is the Son of God. So there is this built-in audience, if you will. In the synagogue, there is a place and time when people can stand up with a word and they can say something. Now, it's a Jewish synagogue. They're in there doing Jewish things. So Paul is not going, he doesn't start a church and go into a church and start trying to attract people to it. He goes into the synagogues. He's a Jew, they're Jewish, Jesus is the Jewish Messiah. So he's going into the synagogue to tell the Jews about their own Jewish Messiah. So he's not being disruptive. Following Jesus Christ actually is the proper progression of biblical Judaism. If he is the Messiah, and we believe that he is. That is what any Jew should do. Any Jew should recognize that Jesus is the Messiah, and following Jesus Christ is the proper progression of their Judaism. So Paul is not infiltrating with a false doctrine. He is coming in and trying to help expand in the synagogue, expand the understanding of the people to incorporate that Christ is the Son of God. Now, when you think of Christ, you're probably thinking of Jesus of Nazareth. And that's not wrong, but I want you to understand there could have been steps here. What do you mean, steps? All the Jews believed in the Anointed One, the Mashiach, Yeshua HaMashiach, or the Mashiach, the Anointed One, the Christ that would come. Christ, John 1:41, is the interpretation, the Greek interpretation of the Hebrew word Mashiach, from what we say Messiah. Christ and Messiah are the same word in two different languages. That's what I'm trying to say. When you say Jesus Christ, you're saying Jesus Messiah, but using a different language to do it. You're using a Greekified version. An English transliteration of the Greek word is Jesus Christ. An English translation of the Hebrew word, it would be Jesus Messiah or Yeshua HaMashiach. It's the same thing in different languages. And by the way, God speaks all languages. You don't have to say the weird stuff in order to get God's attention. You can say Jesus Messiah or Jesus Christ, and God understands you just fine. You don't have to say Yeshua. God understands what you're talking about when you say Jesus. So it could be that Paul is first taking the concept of the Christ, the Anointed One, forget who he is or isn't, but the Christ, showing that he is the Son of God. Now, step one. And then could later tie it to the fact that this is Jesus of Nazareth. I'm not saying that's what he did, but I'm saying that approach could be taken. You could deal with the concept of Christ separately before attaching it to this human Jesus of Nazareth, okay? Because they already had that in common. So he could be doing that. But all that heard him were amazed and said, "Is not this he that destroyed?" Now, I think it's, in the context, it seems pretty obvious that everyone knows they're talking about Jesus of Nazareth. So I just want to put that out there so that you understand that could happen with Jews. But all that heard him were amazed and said, "Is not this he that destroyed them which called on this name in Jerusalem?" And that would be presuming that they understand Jesus, because he's not preaching, it doesn't say Jesus Christ, but you had to infer that he was. "And came hither for that intent, that he might bring them bound unto the chief priests." Isn't this the guy that was persecuting all the Christians, and now he's become one of them? Now, this is very interesting. This is the great archetypal story of the person who is against something or oppressing something, becoming the something. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie District 9, and I'm going to give you spoiler alerts. If you want to see that movie later, go watch it, and if you don't want to know the spoiler alerts, then don't watch this video for the next 30 seconds. But in District 9, they are illustrating something. It's almost not political satire necessarily, but making a political statement, but so that people can get the message, instead of using different demographics of human beings that are oppressing each other, they actually have an alien race that has come to Earth for refuge, and they have segregated them. And the alien race, they're obviously alien. I mean, they literally look like big insects walking around. And they have these weird clickety-clack language, and then some of the humans that are dealing with them understand the language and can speak it back to them and stuff like that, and they have interpreters and translators, and they have all these people kind of wardened off, and they have them all, they're basically like living in slums and stuff. And apparently there's some kind of spaceship they all came on, and it's all defunct and broken down, but there's some kind of weird technology that they don't understand. And this main guy, I forget his name, like Vivek or something like that, some kind of weird it's in South Africa that this happens. And he's dealing with these people, and he's basically the chief oppressor of these people. He's the person in charge of making sure they stay within their bounds and stay properly oppressed, and arrest them when necessarily when they commit crimes and stuff like that. And something happens to him that he does not expect. And that thing that happens to him over the course of the next few days winds up, spoiler alert, turning this guy into one of the people that he used to oppress so much. And that's the classic story. It's the classic archetypal story of this kind of thing happening. Some unexpected, you're dealing with something, you're trying to refute it, you're trying to oppress it, and then suddenly, all of a sudden, the person finds himself becoming one of them, due to circumstances that weren't exactly in their control or unpredictable. Something happens, and then bam, a few days later you're one of them. And that's what happens to Paul here. He's oppressing and persecuting this specific demographic of people who believe Jesus of Nazareth is the Christ. And then something unexpected happens to him, and he becomes one of them. Okay? Now, of course, because he had all that power and all the authority given by the chief priests, he has all this power. Nobody wants to fool with that. Nobody trusts him. Nobody wants to trust him. It makes sense. Ananias doesn't want to trust him. And so everybody else is amazed, and they're saying the same thing. This guy's out there preaching this. Isn't this kind of crazy that he used to be persecuting these guys and now he's one of them? Okay? So it's kind of amazing. So some kind of insight can do this thing to you. But Saul increased the more in strength. Now this is very interesting, increasing in strength. To be enabled, strength to make strong, to be empowered. It is not clear. It is not clear here if this strength is exactly the same as this strength up here in verse 19. Verse 19 kind of increase in strength just seems like, okay, he hadn't eaten or drunk anything for 3 days because he was blind and praying and all this. And now he's eating and drinking. When he had received meat, he was strengthened. And then Saul in verse 22, Saul increased the more in strength. Is that the same, just physical strength? Just feeling better, feeling more healthy because now you're eating more food and that kind of thing? Or is this something that is giving him increased capacity to prove that Jesus is the Christ to these Jews? That's a good observation question. It's not one that I'm going to attempt to answer for you, but it might be fun to think about and to consider. Now, those of you who are stuck in the legacy ways of thinking, what you're doing right now is you're jumping to answers. Well, it just means that you're immediately jumping to answers without considering the difference. And that's what's wrong with the church. People like you need to stop doing that if the church is ever going to grow. It's not about necessarily being the first person to jump to knee-jerk reactions. Anybody can do that. Anybody can post hoc rationalize something to match a paradigm. That's not what we're trying to do. Could it be that this strength has to do with his capacity to prove that Jesus of Nazareth essentially is the very Christ? Or is it just this physical strength just from having eaten food? Something to think about. My wife and I were discussing this last night, and the strength aspect, there's something to it that at first hand, seems like it's just physical strength because he's eating, but that doesn't settle well. It doesn't stop. The wheels of the mind don't stop turning and don't seem to be satisfied with that, if you will. So I think that's worth thinking about. And so he increased in strength and confounded the Jews which dwelt at Damascus, proving that this is very Christ. Now we're going to talk about this word confounded for a little bit because I think this is very interesting. It's very important. Confounded, you might think, well, the next thing you need to understand this, and after many days were fulfilled, after many days. So this happens, the confounding of the Jews at Damascus, proving this is Christ, that happens. Then after many days. How many is many days? I don't know, maybe this little thing helps here. I don't know how many days is. Let me see. They have a reference here to Galatians 17 and 18. And it could be 15 days, could be 3 years. I don't think we're talking years here. Okay, I think we're probably talking, I don't know, maybe a fortnight, maybe 2 weeks or less or so. After many days were fulfilled, and maybe more, maybe 3 months, I don't know, the Jews took counsel to kill him. Now I cannot prove this to you, just as you can't prove me otherwise, but this group of Jews to whom Christ was proved and this group of Jews, I'm not sure they're exactly the same people. The sense that I get, and I can't prove this to you in the text, I get the sense that the rank and file Jew who's just attending the synagogue, the rank and file Jew, the numbers, they are probably responding positively to the idea that this is the Christ. That's what I think is happening. But the establishment of the Jews there decides that this is not good because this is disruptive. Think of the business world, and when you're selling, say you're selling widgets, right? Say you're selling tablet computers, and then somebody comes out with an iPad, and that disrupts your market, and then people start buying iPads and not the tablets you were trying to sell, or something like that. Okay. Disruptive technology. This is, I want to say disruptive ideology, but I don't want to call genuine Christianity ideology. The belief systems within Christianity that tend to populate it are ideologies, but not this. But this is disruptive, what's happening. I suspect that just as in any case, what typically happens when you study group dynamics in any situation, the rank and file people do not have a problem with the new information, but the establishment, it's a power law dynamic. They need to be in control. They have a gated institutional narrative. If the narrative shifts from what they have been saying towards something else, then that could also shift the hierarchical structure of the in-group, which would essentially dethrone them off the ladder that they've climbed to the hierarchical position that they are now enjoying. And then somebody else would be sitting there, people who can best prove that Jesus of Nazareth is the Messiah would now be at the center and the top of the in-group rather than them. So what do we do about this? Do we normalize to this new information and risk reshuffling the hierarchical structure of our in-group and maybe we won't wind back up on top? Or do we just censor this? Do we just kill this guy and get rid of him? And they opt to censor it. Somebody asked me one time, I have a Facebook page, Beyond the Fundamentals, we have a Facebook page, and sometimes people can comment on the posts that we make there. And I try to allow comments, but when people get disruptive for no reason, I'll delete their comments. Sometimes I'll engage with them, but quite honestly, it really has to do with what mood I'm in and how much time I think I have. Like if I'm trying to juggle time between my job and my wife and my family, and I'm trying to eat dinner and I see this comment and it looks long and it looks like the person's angry, I won't even read it. I'll just delete it because, hey, what else am I going to do? And then every once in a while I'll say, maybe I'm in a different situation. I have a little bit more time. I'm in a different kind of mood. And like maybe it's a teachable moment to engage with this person and show the world how wrong they are. So that's really all there is to it. Well, this person, I just deleted his comment. He's like, did you delete my comment? I thought you didn't believe in censoring. Well, I don't believe in censoring. On my channel, I do have a gated institutional narrative. I'm not promoting censoring like trying to get you kicked off Facebook altogether. I am all for you saying your message to whoever you want on your platform. I'm all for that. I'm just not for you doing it on my platform. You see? There's a difference in distinguishing platforms versus genuine censorship. I'm not trying to shut you up. I'm not trying to take your voice away. I'm not trying to say you can't have anything to say. If you had a YouTube channel, I'm not trying to shut down your YouTube channel. I'm not even going to spam your comment section. Not even going to do any of that. I'm going to let you have your say. You reach your audience and say what you have to say, and I fully support your ability and willingness to do that, and people who watch my channel to go watch yours. I don't care. I really don't care. So I'm not trying to censor you, but I will control what is being put on my platform that I am putting out because I'm responsible for that. Okay? I have a certain message that I'm trying to get out, and if I want that message to be clear and that kind of thing, that's something that I have to do. So don't confuse platform segregation with censorship. That is two completely different things. Okay? Now these guys are they're trying to absolutely get the point where the guy can't speak or say anything to anybody on any platform. And that's not what I'm trying to do. I fully support you to say whatever you want to say on your platform, but you don't necessarily get to use mine to distribute your message. Okay? Kind of reminds me of these football players taking a knee and showing their fist and stuff like that. Like, if they wanted to do that on a different platform, that's fine. But the NFL is its own platform, and its platform is supposed to be where people can escape from politics and just watch sports. And that's what the NFL is. And if a person got fired for that, it wouldn't be a violation of free speech because it's the NFL's platform, and they have the right to say in their platform whatever they want. Now, they're not saying the guy can't go get on a commercial or get on a radio show or start his own radio show or start his own platform to say whatever he wants. He's free to do that. Censorship would be putting the guy in jail or killing him. Firing somebody because they don't match your platform is not censorship. And that is fully well within the rights of an employer to fire somebody when they are putting out a message that does not match your platform, because as the employer, you have the right to establish what your platform is. And the people who work for you need to support that platform, not some other platform. So, like, if they want to say there's some kind of social, racial injustice, that's fine, but do it on a different platform, because the NFL platform is for football, not for, complaining against the nation that gave you the greatest amount of opportunities you ever had in the first place anyway. That's a different platform. Go do that somewhere else. It's a different platform. So platform segregation, I'm all for. Absolute censorship, I'm not for. Say what you want to say on the platform that you can establish for yourself. Attract your own audience and say what you want to say. Okay? That's not the same. People think that they have the right to accost or take over somebody else's platform. It's somebody else's audience, okay? You see this happen sometimes when somebody builds up a church and a salesman will want to come in. You have a captive audience that somebody else collected, okay? Or somebody will want to come debate me on my channel. They want access to my audience. I built this audience. You didn't build it. Go build your own audience. Or a church. One person will build the church, and then a Calvinist will want to come take over that audience and repopulate it with this cancerous doctrine. And go build your own audience, fool. Okay? I'm all for you saying what you want to say, but don't take over and hijack somebody else's audience that they built up. That's that's so low. It's so classless. It's so trashy. It's such a trashy thing to do. Now you say, what's Paul doing here? He's, Paul is an established member of the Jewish community. He is part of that establishment, and Jesus Christ is part of the narrative. That is the progression of where that should be going. So he's not taking it over with something different. He's trying to help lead them as a member of the establishment. He's still a Jew. He's still a Pharisee. He's still trying to lead them into where they should be going. So I think the rank and file are actually probably responding pretty positively, and the establishment is trying to censor him. Now they're confounded. Now this word confounded is, I looked up this word, and this stood out as my wife and I were discussing this last night. This stood out to us as well. And I want to show you some of the things we found. If you look up the word confounded, I need to shut off my mail because it's beeping at me. Just in the Olive Tree Bible app, it gave you this. Just the English word confounded. Amaze, astonish, dumbfound, stagger, surprise, startle, stun, stupefy. It doesn't mean converted. It doesn't necessarily just mean confused. Confounded, daze, nonplus, to throw, shake, unnerve, disconcert, discompose, dismay, bewilder, set someone thinking, baffle, mystify, bemuse, perplex, puzzle, confuse, to take someone's breath away, take by surprise, to take aback, to shake up, to stop someone in their tracks, to strike dumb, to leave open mouth, leave aghast, catch off balance. The informal flabbergast, floor, knock for six, knock sideways, knock out, knock the stuffing out of somebody, bowl over, blow someone's mind, blow away, flummox, discombobulate, phase, stump, beat, fox, make someone scratch their head. Okay? That you would think, if you're just reading this passage over here and you see the word confounded, you might think that they're debating whether or not Jesus is Christ, and they get proven wrong, and they're just flummoxed because they're proven wrong, but they still want to be right. I don't think that's what's happening here. If you look at these words, it looks like there's a concession here. The confounding. He is proving that Jesus is the Christ. And they are shaken, they are unnerved, they're stunned, they're astonished, they're amazed. They're confounded. They're bemused. They're puzzled. And if you think about the narrative, of who the Christ was to a Jew, the Christ was supposed to be this Isaiah 6 type figure. And they have a narrative for the Christ. And the Christ is supposed to show up. He's supposed to take political control. And he's supposed to overthrow the Romans. That's what they are expecting. They're expecting wonderful counselor, the mighty God, of his government there shall be no end. The everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. That's what they're expecting. Isaiah 6 kind of Messiah. They're expecting a Psalm 100 kind of thing, this kingdom to come, and the king to set up his kingly throne. And literal political, physical kingdom, which is still coming soon to a city near you. But that's all they're expecting. And so imagine somebody shows up and says, hey, what about the Psalm 22 aspect of the Messiah? Psalm 22 is a prediction of the crucifixion of Christ, very detailed. What about the Isaiah 53 version of the Messiah? Like Peter says, not just the glory, but the sufferings and the glory that should follow. See, they're focused. If you ever look at the mountain peaks of prophecy, I'm going to show you the mountain peaks of water here. Say you have the mountain peaks of, I can't hold two of these at the same time and then illustrate between them. Imagine, from this side, you can see both and everything that's in between. But if you're looking from this way, you just see this peak and then this peak. You don't see what's between. And there's the sufferings of Christ and the church age and stuff like that between the coming of the Messiah and the kingdom. But if you're looking at it from this angle, you might think the coming of the Messiah and the kingdom are simultaneous events that happen at the same time. And so Paul shows up and essentially shifts their perspective and say, look what's between these two mountain peaks. Look at Isaiah 53. And I don't know what passages he used. But for example, look at Isaiah 53. Look at Psalm 22. Look at Zechariah 14. Look at some of these passages and look that the Messiah has these other things to do too, and they happened right on the money. There's a lot of prophecies. Google that sometime. There's a lot of prophecies in the Old Testament that are fulfilled in Jesus Christ. And I would suspect that Paul is probably going through some of those, showing these. Saul at this time, not Paul yet, Saul. Saul's probably going through some of these to show this, that Jesus of Nazareth fulfills all these other requirements of the Messiah that you guys have been overlooking. And now you can imagine believing one specific narrative of the Messiah. And then all of a sudden, I've been corrected on this. Your concept of what the Messiah does when he shows up starts to shift based on things that you already believe. And you've gotten this insight. I never thought to connect Psalm 22 and Isaiah 53 with Isaiah 9. I never thought to connect that. I never thought, where does that go? I never realized that was the Messiah. I never, Psalm 110. I never thought about that. Psalm 69. I never thought about that. So what do I do with that information? So what's happening is they're getting this insight. And the confounding, the way I envision it, is the pinnacle of the insight has to do with who Jesus of Nazareth is, what the Christ is, more information about what the Christ is, and then that Christ is Jesus of Nazareth, and then there's like a domino effect as this information ripples back through all the stuff that they know and think they know about the Old Testament already. And they're realizing how many different things that it impacts and how many things that it changes. And they're just, this is just happening. Like, it's almost like an altered state of consciousness where you're just in awe. Like, I cannot deny this. This is right. Something in me doesn't want it to be right, but wow, this is right. I'm absolutely knocked for six. I'm knocked sideways. I'm thrown. I'm unnerved. I'm disconcerted. I'm discomposed. I'm in a state of uncertainty. I'm bewildered. I'm baffled. I'm mystified. I'm bemused as this information, this insight. It's both a light bulb moment and very probably fear-inducing at the same time. Like, wow, that's right. Wow, what does that mean for this establishment in which we have entrenched ourselves? What does that mean for that? And you can see the little dominoes falling and the wheels turning back on all their understanding of that, back on how they've positioned themselves within their in-groups and what all this means. What else would it do? What else would it do? It would absolutely dumbfound you. Confounded is the right word. Confounding is the type of thing that needs to happen when somebody considers the Christ. All you've ever considered the Christ for, this audience here, is probably just somebody who's going to come provide military, political, physical deliverance. Show up, take charge, and now it's basically paradise-type conditions with your guy on the throne running everything how you think they should be run. And of course, everybody probably filled that in with their imagination in ways that might not be realistic. You know, Jesus might have a few things to say to them too. And then all of a sudden, you get bombarded with this Messiah that I should be obeying and to whom I should be loyal is not just going to take over the world. That's coming, but he's not just going to do that. What he's actually going to do, he's going to take on the transgressions. The Lord laid on him the iniquity of us all. What responsibility is that? He takes on all that responsibility, the iniquity of us all, Isaiah 53. And then he poured out his soul even unto death and the sacrifice to take on the responsibility and then the sacrifice of that responsibility. And you do that in love. Greater love hath no man than this, and a man lay down his life for his friends. You do that in love. You sacrificially take on responsibility out of love for somebody else. How selfless is that? Now you're bombarded with the idea that the main pinnacle person that you're supposed to be following and submitting to, the pattern of this person is responsibility. sacrifice, and love. And you start comparing yourself with that. Wow, how much responsibility have I taken on? How much do I love other people? And do I love them enough to sacrifice like that for the sake of other people when I have nothing to gain from it? Do I have that kind of... And that's confounding. That's confounding. And if you understand that kind of Christ, and I think that pattern of Christ, and I don't know how far this goes, and I don't care who thinks I'm a heretic, I really don't, but the Bible says that Hebrews that Abraham received him in a figure when he believed that God could raise up Isaac from the dead. I really think that whether or not this means somebody's saved or not, I'm not going there. I don't care. You can think what you want about that. I mean, I care, but I don't care what you think. So, but I do think the world would be such a better place if everyone, whether or not people believe in the truth claims of Christianity, I think that everyone can believe in the pattern of the Christ. What is the pattern of Jesus of Nazareth? The Bible says, consider him who endured such a contradiction of sinners, lest we be wearied and faint in our minds, in Hebrews chapter 12. Consider him. When you consider that pattern, anybody, anywhere, irrespective of their belief system, can consider the pattern of Jesus of Nazareth, of Jesus Christ, to take on responsibility, to take it on sacrificially, and to do that out of love for other people. Anybody can take on that pattern. I think that as Christians, maybe, when we are attempting to evangelize, maybe we try to show that pattern first. And then maybe when we talk with people, we dialogically explore that pattern first before we start talking about requirements to believe metaphysical truth claims that can't be epistemically proven. See, I don't think necessarily that Jesus is such a stumbling block to... He is to Jews, 1 Corinthians 1, but I don't think he's necessarily such a stumbling block to Gentiles, to the rest of us, if he's presented clearly. I think what gets in the way of a lot of people is the belief systems, the sets of beliefs that people have that cannot be epistemically proven. So instead of presenting Christ in the essence of who he is, what Christians wind up doing is they wind up presenting belief systems to people. They wind up presenting an ideology, a bunch of truth claims. You have to believe all these little things and then you'll go to heaven. And so I don't have anything participatory to show this person now. I just have a promise of something that I can't prove to them in heaven later. Take all this by faith. But if I can present to them instead the pattern of the Christ, that irrespective of anything you think we should or should not believe, what we're asking to start with, if you look at John 7:17, if any man will do his will, he shall know of the doctrine, whether it be of God or whether I speak of myself. What we're asking to start with, before we ask anybody to believe any kind of truth claims, what we're first going to do is present the pattern of the Christ. And we're going to say that loving people enough to take on responsibility for things that aren't your fault, to make those things better, and to sacrificially, that responsibility is going to come with a cost. So there's going to be sacrifice on your part involved. We think this is the way forward for mankind. And that can be extracted from the narrative of Jesus of Nazareth, from Jesus Christ. I think anybody can believe in that Christ. And you start there, and you start participatorily with doing. And as you see in the book of Acts over and over, like we're going to look at in chapter 10 with Cornelius, you start participatorily with a participation, and then it refines itself into some propositional statements by the time we get to chapter 15. It takes, like, from 10 to 15, that's 5 chapters. It takes 5 chapters for something participatorily true and accepted to coalesce itself into refined propositions. Now, what we've done with Christianity is we are so concerned with the refined propositions that we have completely abandoned the participatory element of Christianity and what it means to follow Christ and to do his will. And what I'm saying is that as we present Christ, what if we try that? What if we try, like the pattern we see in Scripture, is to present something participatory first. Here, try this. You ever try that with a kid? Here, try this. And then you tell them that it's Brussels sprouts later. Or then you tell them it's got lizard tails in it or whatever. I think my wife and I tried something recently. I forget what it was, but it was really good. And then I said, wait till we find out what's in it. And my wife said something like, I don't care if it's lizard tail and snake skins. It's good. Something like that. She's assessed it to be good experientially, participatorily. And at that point, I'm not so concerned. I took my kids to a restaurant recently and we had them eat calamari, squid. We let them taste it first. And if we would have said, hey, let's eat some squid, I don't know what kind of reaction we would have gotten. But with my oldest 2 child, they were not positive reactions. But with the youngest 2 children, we tried something different. Let them participatorily experience it first. They like it. And then we tell them it's squid. And that's how it went. They tried it first. They liked it. And then we told them that it was squid. And then they were okay with it and kept eating them. Way, way different. First 2 children, I tried to tell them, hey, this is squid. And you might enjoy this. Let's eat this. They didn't, grossed them out. Didn't want to do it. Second 2 children tried something differently. What can we do to present Jesus Christ like that? So I think of Christianity. What would it be possible to present Christianity in a way that is irrespective of its belief system? What do you mean? I have an iPad here. Let's say that this is Christianity, right? And then down here I have a belief system, and down here I have another belief system. So the kind of in my mind, the picture that I have in my mind is like Christianity up here, and we'll call that the religion of Christianity. And I know Christianity isn't a religion; it's a faith or it's a reality. I get it, but I'm using this terminology for the ease of having a discussion about it. So let's call Christianity the religion, whatever it is that's in the Bible, and all the belief systems that come under it. You might have the Baptists, the Catholics, the Methodists, the Greek Orthodox. You have all these different belief systems under Christianity. Would it be possible to present Christianity without presenting a belief system? Could you do that? Those of you who are so focused on evangelism, could you do that? Could you present Jesus Christ outside of a belief system? Consider branding. Like there's probably branding going, like the idea of Jesus of Nazareth being Christ was probably an idea that had circulated itself during this day and time. Did it have good branding? Probably didn't have good branding. What do we say to shake, when people think of Christianity, they're thinking of anything from Catholics to snake handlers, okay? So you don't know what's going through their mind. And those are all different bespoke, those are different belief systems of broader Christianity. How do we present, how do we live, how do we experience and participate in Christianity without being beholden to any of the belief systems that have developed underneath it? How do we do that? How do we present that? If we're going to present Christianity to somebody, how do we present Christianity in a way that does not try to wrap it in the pretty packaging and nice little bow of a particular belief system within Christianity. And shake people's minds. If they're thinking of Catholics or snake handlers, how do we present Christ in such a way that shakes their minds away, that causes them to realize that I'm not presenting the thing that you're thinking of when you think of Christianity. I'm presenting something completely different, and I want you to listen to me. And I think that there's something participatory that has to start with that. Okay? One of the ways to do that is to present a participatory Christ. If any man will do his will, he shall know of the doctrine, whether it be of God or whether I speak of myself. The pattern of Christ, present that. We present something participatory. There is, we get locked in these belief systems. And we don't know, as Christians, we don't know how to operate outside the belief system. It's like you could imagine like a castle with a plot of land around it. And people are stuck in the castle. And they don't know how to get out. And they think they're all in a fortified, safe position. And what they need to do, and what that represents, is an immature version of Christianity. There is a growth that comes with people can't deal with novelty. And they can't get outside the castle walls and start dealing with the land. There's all kinds of power and affordances and capabilities and wisdom transformation affordances that are out there in the land that can be obtained. But we're too afraid to get out there because we're not able to deal with novelty, okay? And somebody who's not able to deal with novelty is like a child who cannot leave their mother. They can't deal with novelty out, and they have to be with something they know, okay? And the belief system that you're attached to is the thing that you know. And if you think that leaving the belief system is unsafe and that the belief system is safe, you are espousing an immature version of Christianity which is not capable of dealing with novelty. You see? And so wisdom comes with dealing with novelty, being able to branch outside of the belief system, outside of the safety structure. That's for toddlers. That's for toddlers. And you're supposed to grow beyond that. But yeah, when you're 2 and you're holding on to your mother's leg and won't leave it, that's fine. But when you're 22, it's time to move out of grandma's basement. And churches that still have statements of faith, confessions of faith, and systematic theologies like this nonsense right here, you are a 45-year-old in grandmother's basement playing video games who has failed to launch. The edification process is metaparadigmatic, and it involves every joint in the process. Ephesians 4:16, everybody is participating in the edification process. And the people there, repentance, metanoia, must be meta-paradigmatic. Metanoia is meta-cognition. The paradigm, you have to be meta-paradigmatic, beyond the paradigm. Your belief system, if you're a Baptist, if you're a Catholic, your belief system is a paradigm. And you have all these beliefs that comprise your paradigm. And to be meta-paradigmatic, to repent, is to be meta-paradigmatic, is to go beyond that paradigm and be able to operate outside of it and be able to have wisdom to encounter and deal with novelty and separate the signal from the noise and incorporate things that strengthen you and make you better, discard things that make you worse. And you're addicted. We become enabled. These belief systems, we get, it's a learned helplessness. If you're stuck to a belief system, you cannot encounter novelty. You are helpless to encounter novelty, so you stick within the belief system because you're not wise enough to encounter novelty. And it's a learned helplessness. So learned helplessness, I heard Jordan Hall equate that recently with learned formality. Learned formality is learned helplessness. You get stuck in a way, you formalize an ordered way of doing things so much that you disable yourself from being able to encounter novelty. Okay? Like if your legs worked perfectly fine medically, but you sat in a wheelchair all the time and never used your legs, you wouldn't be able to run or jump or climb stairs or climb the wall or run from a bad guy or kick somebody or play soccer. You wouldn't be able to do any of that. You couldn't take advantage of the affordances to increase your capacity and your flexibility and your mobility. You couldn't take advantage of those affordances because you're stuck. You're stuck to something. You're enabling something that you're addicted to to learned helplessness. Learned formality is learned helplessness. I became aware of somebody just this morning who was having a conversation, and somebody said that the mega churches are the problem. If we got back to liturgy, that would solve the problem. No. The liturgy is a learned formality because people lack the wisdom to encounter novelty. So you do this liturgical church situation. The mega church and all the problems with the mega churches are a symptom of the problems caused by the liturgical church. Okay? It's not a departure from the liturgical church that caused the mega churches. It's an exasperation of frustration with the liturgical church and the fact that it has no affordances for transformation that causes the mega church phenomenon, the symptom of the problem. We are not developing people into transformed people. This learned helplessness thing. So you're afraid. Your belief system, and now listen to this word, is your orienting factor. It tells you how to orient yourself. You are afraid to go beyond your belief system because you don't know how to orient yourself. And if you were to encounter novelty outside of the belief system telling you what to do with it, you wouldn't know how to handle yourself. You wouldn't know how to deal with that. So the replacement. When the Ephesians 4:11, the fivefold ministry, pastors, teachers, evangelists, prophets, all that kind of stuff, apostles, that is to bring somebody up and hopefully edify them into the place where they can be in touch with the Logos. There comes a point in time where when you can be in touch with the Logos, you can use that as an orienting factor for encountering novelty rather than your belief system. If you are afraid to depart from your belief system and you think that's dangerous, it's because you're not in touch with the Logos. That's why you're afraid of it. And the idea is to graduate out of the belief system to where you can be in touch with the Logos. And you have an ecology of practices that keep you in touch with the Logos and keep you sensing it properly and keep you discerning it properly to where you can see it everywhere you look and you can interact with it, and you can interact in a way that gives you affordances for increased capacity in your own wisdom in dealing with things. Now, when you're stuck inside your belief system and you demand order, that order itself becomes a prison. It's so much of a prison, it decreases your mobility and your wisdom and your ability to be relevant and interact in the world. We don't want that. That's like failing to launch. That's like being in grandma's basement playing video games and not having a job. That's like voluntarily sitting in a wheelchair when your legs medically work just fine. You unnecessarily limit your own mobility. So you want to be in touch with the Logos. I hesitate to use movies as examples because a lot of the weaker brethren out there are going to be all offended about it, okay? But sometimes movies have good examples. The Star Wars movies, you have Han Solo, who is this kind of fly by the seat of your pants kind of guy. Never tell me the odds, kid, that kind of thing, where the plan is loosely fit together and they kind of feel it out as they go and it winds up working. And that is that's kind of like being in touch with the Logos. Now I know Star Wars has the Force and everything. I'm not trying to talk about that. To use another example, you could say like the Mission Impossible movies with Tom Cruise and all that. One of the things that they get criticized for, the team gets criticized for, is having high-risk plans where the details aren't all ironed out and things wind up working really by luck is probably the best way to say it. Things wind up working more or less by luck, but they wind up working. But what you have is people who are highly attuned with the operational environment, who can make wise decisions when things don't go right. In the military, you learn that all the plans go out the window as soon as the enemy fires the first shot. As soon as the enemy throws the first punch, all your plans on how to fight go out the window. So at that point, yeah, you had a plan, but that plan has to be shifted, modified, adapted to the shifting environment. And you have to have wisdom in order to adapt to the shifting environment. What you want to cultivate is the capacity for wisdom for how to keep making good decisions in a shifting environment, rather than addiction to an enabling belief system, which is learned helplessness. And learned formality is learned helplessness. And you can't branch out and become a wise person and start doing anything better with your life, right? In my own life, it's kind of weird. Like right now, my wife and I, Paula, we are settled in a very, by all measures, what we assess to be a very good situation. Very good situation. And 2 years ago when we met, there were a lot of things that had to take place between now and then. There's been job changes, there's been car changes, there's been house changes. There's been all sorts of things that if we would have tried to digest and metabolize everything that was going to happen over the next 2 years when we first met, we probably just would have said, let's forget it. Probably would not have, all right? Because the connection is electric and it's great. But still, it would have been overwhelming. It would have been daunting. But step by step, you kind of feel out the next couple of steps, and you get a sense for when it's the right thing to do the next thing, when it's the right time to do the next thing, and when of the available options, which one is the correct answer. And then sometimes things don't go right, but then another opportunity, you keep digging and poking, and another opportunity presents itself, which is better than what you thought you were getting yourself into, which would have been a wise decision to start with. Okay, had some of these things happen, and I've sensed this entire time. I knew that we were going to get here. At the beginning, I could not have told you the exact route we were going to take to get here, but I also knew. But step by step, as we went along the way, I felt like I knew the correct decision to make as we went the whole time. And it's been amazing. It's been wonderful. And here we are where all this change has transpired. And I really feel like it's like this entire time I have felt like I've been in some kind of a flow state. There have been times where discombobulated and confounded and stuff like that, but there's been some kind of a flow state where I can't really explain to somebody else exactly what the plan is, but I do know that it's going to work, but I can't tell you how I know that. It's almost like when you are playing basketball or volleyball and you just have this vibe and you're cooking with grease and you know you're going to win. I can't explain to somebody else how I know that or how I feel that, but it's just there. And it's happening. You can sense it. You know to sense it. If you are attached to a belief system and you think that it's dangerous to leave the belief system, what that indicates is that you are not in touch with the Logos and you do not have a trust relationship built with the Logos. And that is what you need to cultivate. And you have to figure out, you need to stop and think, how do I cultivate a relationship with the Logos? With the creator of the universe, who, he upholds all things by the word of his power. Okay? The Son of God, Jesus Christ, the Logos, the active, intelligent agency in the world that's emanating from the source of all creation is all around us. And you can tap into it, and you can understand the direction that you should take. And if your faith in Christ is not advancing you along that capability path, then you are in fact not following the Christ of the Bible. You are following some kind of mental construct that's an image, a molten, graven mental image of God that is not the real thing. And you are really worshiping and beholden to a belief system and not Jesus Christ. How do we get all that out of the word confounded? I don't know. I don't know. But I do feel like it was the right thing to say. I feel like there's a flow state happening where the thing that needs to be said, the thing that you need to hear, is coming through. It just came through. It needs to be heard. So he confounded the Jews which dwelt at Damascus, proving that this is very Christ. And I want to end real quick, but I do want to say a couple of things to think about for next time when we come together. Well, I want to talk about Peter later, but we have a few verses between now and then, so we're after the 1 hour mark. I'm going to stop here, and then we'll pick up next week right after verse 22. We're going to keep going with verse 23 starting next week. Thanks for watching. May the Lord bless you, and have a great day.